Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. It's me, Addy, again, and today I'm going to be reviewing Lies of P, the latest non-FromSoftware Souls-like by Neowiz Games that I just completed the other night over on Twitch. So Lies of P is a spectacular take on the classic beloved tale of a character I'm sure you're all familiar with, that of course being Timothy Chalamet's Pinocchio by Carlo Collodi. And unlike any rendition of the story before it, this one's set in front of a dark fantasy backdrop sprinkled with gothic horror elements that really tap into the aesthetics present in something like Bloodborne, which is my second favorite game of all time, and should really also be a pretty solid indicator of how much I enjoyed this game. Of course, in Lies of P you play as Pinocchio, you venture through a scary apocalyptic world, and try to get to the bottom of why other puppets are batshit insane, and why the surviving humans are succumbing to a terrible disease. It's straightforward, cryptic, Eldritchian stuff that you would expect out of the worlds created by FromSoftware, the literal masters of creating what Lies of P tries to be, which is again a Souls-like. And Lies of P adapts nearly everything that a traditional Souls-like by the masters themselves would entail, including the bare-bones stuff like challenging enemies, losing your shit when you die, a safe area to level up, and more. But even when it comes to the more meticulous details of a FromSoft game, Lies of P still manages to mimic them with a great degree of polish. Some of these areas include the tight interwoven level design, solid action RPG elements with good build variety, and compelling NPCs with interesting stories and side quests, some of whom you'll recognize from Pinocchio's stories. Like Geppetto, the Blue Fairy, and Gemini, they're all here and have been incorporated in this unique spin on the tale in some very cool and creative ways. I even spoke about this in my impressions video, but hell, even the way the UI is laid out in this game is ripped directly from FromSoftware's games. From FromSoftware, that actually sounds kind of fun to say, I'm not gonna lie. All of this is to say that Lies of P is designed in such a way that if you didn't know any better, you would absolutely think that it's yet another banger made by Hidetaka Miyazaki, and would have you scratching your head going, dang, this man just got done making quite possibly the biggest game of the generation, and he's back already? Holy shit, he's on a roll. But no, this is neither by FromSoftware nor Miyazaki, but it might as well, given how much it just gets it, you know? Because what I do truly appreciate about Lies of P is how it doesn't just adapt the gameplay elements you would expect from a FromSoftware game, but it also puts its own distinguishing spin on said gameplay elements, which in a way is exactly what a FromSoftware game does. For example, every game has largely melee-based combat with an emphasis on dodging, but each unique game will have its own gimmick, like in Dark Souls, where you'll dodge roll and go in for chip damage, in Bloodborne, where you can quick step and parry with your gun, in Sekiro, where you can parry with your sword and dodge into certain enemy attacks, and in Elden Ring, where you can jump? My point is that Lies of P doesn't shy away from taking its own bold endeavors. This game is again about parrying, kinda like in Sekiro, but also quick-stepping like in Bloodborne, although it doesn't quite have that same fast, frenetic pace that the latter does. Combat is a lot slower, kinda like in the first two Dark Souls games, but does occasionally get a tiny bit faster in some of the more grueling boss fights, which, believe you me, are pretty grueling. Sad face. And you've even got flashy weapon arts like in Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring, which use up your magic, which is called Fable in this game, and you even get to fight with your puppet arm called a Legion arm, of which there are many that you can build and upgrade as you play, with each one offering unique attacks and abilities. Now, I of course had to go with the gun arm, cause Bloodborne reasons. Eat shit and die! And some of the unique mechanics that Lies of P brings to the table were very satisfying, like being able to block incoming damage to then regain a bit of your lost health through attacking, kind of like in Bloodborne, and being able to get one of your Estus-like healing items, which are called pulse cells in this game, back when you attack foes enough. The whole risk-reward aspect is back, and it was so cool to see Neowiz understanding its importance to a Souls-like and incorporating it so well here. Art direction and sound design are incredibly important as well to an experience like this, and all I really have to say in this department is that they were truly magical, and yet two other facets that Neowiz absolutely saw the importance of and worked their asses off to perfect. The horrible dread that permeates the world is easily infused by the bleak and dilapidated structure of everything. Music doesn't play when it doesn't need to, allowing the upsetting sounds of the environment to take over, and music does play when it does need to emphasize respite in safe areas and dramaticism in climactic moments in epic boss fights. Point is, the presentation in this game is awesome. Even some of the non-combat things were done very well too. For example, on the narrative side of things, I absolutely loved the dialogue system. Of course, since you're playing as Pinocchio, there are scenarios in this game where you can either lie or tell the truth to certain NPCs that influence your destiny, and more specifically, the ending of certain side quests, the game itself, and your nose. Just kidding about that last part, or am I? I guess you'll have to play to find out. Oh shit, I hope my nose doesn't grow from lying to you guys right now. But speaking of side quests, let's touch on some of the optional jazz. If you've played a Soulsborne game before, you'll notice a myriad of optional locations with their very own spectacles and bosses sprinkled in as you work through the largely linear world, barring Elden Ring of course. But in Lies of P, I can't say I found too many optional areas. There were definitely a good amount of optional bosses, but ones that you fight in a pretty strict linear fashion in levels that you're already meant to be working through. This isn't a bad thing, by the way. I appreciate that this game knows its scope, it knows how condensed and on the rails it wants to be, and it still does nevertheless give you tiny slivers of exploration here and there, with interesting enemies and treasures to find off to the side, which will almost always be worth your time. Like damn, there was never a dull moment in this game where I felt like this game wasted the play space that was offered to me. What we really need to talk about here are the weapons. Now, as with any other Souls-like, you've got your standard heavy weapons and light weapons whose attributes are influenced by the kind of build that you're going for, and what's nice is that they really do have the same wow factor as the trick weapons in Bloodborne and instill that same sense of excitement upon discovering them as you play. The reason for this is because they have so many unique styles and wacky transformative movesets that make each and every one of them worth experimenting with at some point during your playthrough. And the two best parts of all this, there are no stat requirements for using any of the weapons in this game, allowing you to go absolutely apeshit at any point with anything. And number two, you can also mix and match the various weapon heads you've acquired with the various weapon handles, allowing you to tailor the attack animations, weapon arts, and stat scaling to your very own playstyle. Like shit, if you wanted to attach a giant wrench head to a tiny dagger hilt because you like how a dagger attack pattern usually plays out, but you want the damage of a big fat wrench, you could totally do that. And of course, you've got boss weapons you can acquire through trading in boss souls as well. That's back in this game. And while these weapons don't allow you to detach their heads and handles from one another, they nevertheless offer some of the illest looking attack animations and special gimmicks that, dare I say, I've seen for any weapons in any video game. Holy shit. Okay. Oh my god, it's a fucking Oreo from Bloodborne. It's a whirligig saw. Holy shit, that's fucking dope. I also loved the supplementary upgrade system in Lies of P next to the traditional means of leveling up at your usual vendor called P-Organ Upgrades, in which you can tinker with Pinocchio's literal organs by imbuing them with certain buffs that then unlock new combat mechanics and more. It was all just wonderful. Now with all of this said, Lies of P doesn't just incorporate what we know and love from FromSoftware's games, but in some ways makes them even better. Small quality of life elements like being able to see which areas of the game have pending side quests you're yet to complete, not having stat requirements for any weapons, the graphical fidelity, and the fun factor of the boss weapons, at least in my opinion, are just a few of the aspects that I truly believe have an edge over traditional FromSoft Souls games. However, I will say that one thing that never really did click with me was the parrying in this game. Now, I'm someone whose favorite combat mechanic in games is parrying, and so naturally, I made many comparisons between this game's parrying system and that of Sekiro's as I played, the latter of which has the greatest execution of the parry mechanic that I have ever seen. And I think the reason why parrying fell a little short of my expectations in Lies of P is because I never really did feel at any point that I was getting better at it. Sure, there was some immensely satisfying moments in this game where I finally figured out how to defeat the particularly nightmarish bosses by nailing my block timings, but it never felt like my knowledge and practice with timing blocks carried over from enemy to enemy in this one. I felt like I was always having to relearn how to perfect block against each new enemy, if that makes sense, which was never the case for me in Sekiro, which consisted of brutal enemies with nevertheless lenient and clearly telegraphed attacks that you were confident you could parry and get better at doing over the course of the game. It feels like in Lies of P, the game really wants you to parry every single enemy, even the basic foes, but then gives them the most anti-parryable attack patterns. But barring all that, I thought the fights themselves were great overall. Amazing enemy variety ranging from freaky puppets to freaky humans, and insane imposing boss fights that made for some humongous challenges, especially closer to the end of the game where they started to have multiple phases. You're constantly on your toes in this game, it just keeps getting better and better, and you're always left wanting to know more. Be it with the gameplay, the story, the characters, the presentation of it all is brilliant. And the icing on the cake here is that it makes you want to dive back in for NG+, as a FromSoftware game should. And even though this game isn't technically a FromSoftware game, to me it is in spirit, and the highest commendation I can give this game is that it is without a doubt the best non-FromSoftware Souls-like. And as a result, Lies of P is a game that I redonkulously recommend. It's that good. You guys know that meme where the kid goes, "Mom, I want to play X." But then the mom goes, "Well, son, we have X at home." And then she points to Y. Well, Lies of P is basically that for non-PlayStation owners going, "Mom, can we get Bloodborne?" And mom goes, "No, son, we have Bloodborne at home." And then she points to Lies of P. Except mom isn't pointing to something shitty in this instance, which is what you would expect from the meme, since Lies of P is pretty fantastic and something you all should absolutely look into playing if you're not able to give Bloodborne a shot. I loved this game, and I am filled with pride for these developers who, on their initial endeavor to create a large-scale game, have paid a spectacular homage to Bloodborne as skillfully as one could hope for. And I cannot wait for what they do next, especially considering the tease at the end of this game, which I'm totally gonna spoil for you right now. Just kidding, that was a lie. Okay, now my nose didn't grow, thank God. Anyways, guys, I want to thank you as always for checking out this review video. If you did enjoy it, please do drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. And hey, do be sure to follow me over on twitch.tv/irritableidian so you can catch me playing these wonderful games live. Link is in the description. But until the next one, folks, stay happy, stay healthy, stay positive, stay lie free, and as always, keep on keeping on.